The FIA just uncovered a secret inside Mercedes' 2026 engine, and it could change Formula One forever. How do you design an illegal engine that passes every single inspection and still ends up under investigation? You're about to learn what Mercedes did, why it works, and how it could either make them untouchable or trigger the biggest scandal since Spygate. And what's really wild is that the most dangerous part of this story hasn't even been made public. Yet, the secret at the heart of this investigation isn't something you'd notice on a dyno chart or even during a post-race teardown. It's hidden in the molecular structure of the materials themselves. And it only activates when the engine reaches full race temperature. That's what makes this story so insane. Mercedes may have found a way to beat the regulations using physics. Let's break it down. Under the 2026 rules, the FIA limits internal combustion engine compression to 16:1. Why? To prevent manufacturers from overpowering the electric portion of the power unit. But here's the twist: those compression limits are only verified in cold, static conditions. So what happens when the engine heats up to over 120 degrees Celsius? Sources inside the paddock now believe Mercedes has engineered exotic alloys specifically in the pistons and combustion chamber walls that expand just enough under thermal stress to shrink the combustion volume, effectively raising the compression back toward 18:1. That means more torque, better fuel efficiency, and a power advantage that's completely invisible during inspections. And the result? A rumored gain of 15 to 20 horsepower. In modern F1, that's the difference between pole and fourth place. 0.3 per lap. Over a race distance, that's the equivalent of starting with a 5-second head start. So if this is real and if Mercedes pulls it off legally, they're not just quick. They're unbeatable. But here's where things get political. Ferrari, Audi, and Honda are furious. They've reportedly submitted technical complaints to the FIA, accusing Mercedes of violating the spirit of the regulations. They argue this wasn't a clever workaround, it was a deliberate act of regulatory sabotage. But technically, Mercedes hasn't broken a single written rule. So now the FIA is stuck. Do they rewrite the rulebook mid-cycle and risk a civil war between manufacturers? Or do they stay silent, let the loophole stand, and allow Mercedes to dominate like it's 2014 all over again? Either way, someone loses big. And someone's season is over before it begins. And here's the part no one is talking about: Red Bull might be trying to copy the same system. But early whispers suggest reliability problems, detonations, cooling issues, stress fractures under heat. Which begs the question, is this Mercedes advantage real engineering genius, or just a ticking time bomb dressed up as innovation? From the FIA's perspective, this situation couldn't be more delicate. On paper, Mercedes has followed every technical directive. The engine passes all static compression checks. The materials are legal. The assembly is compliant. But in practice on track, under race heat, they may have engineered an entirely different performance envelope. One that the current testing protocols simply can't detect. That's the crux of the controversy. The FIA's current procedures only verify engine parameters at ambient temperature in a controlled garage environment. They're not equipped to measure compression ratios mid-race at 120 degrees Celsius. That's not incompetence, it's physics. But it also means a team with enough foresight and material science expertise can create an advantage that's invisible, unless you know exactly where to look. So what are the FIA's options? The first is to issue a technical directive, redefining how compression should be measured, including during hot operating states. But doing that would effectively outlaw the Mercedes engine without ever declaring it illegal. That's dangerous, because it punishes innovation retroactively. And in a sport where regulations are everything, that sends the wrong message. The second option is silence. Let Mercedes run it. Let the paddock adapt. Let the season unfold naturally and let the results speak. But that also opens the door to chaos. Every other manufacturer would be forced to chase the same loophole. And those without the budget, materials, or integration time, they'd fall behind instantly. That's how dominance starts. Not with raw pace but with technical inertia. And there's a third option. A full rule change. But that would require unanimous approval from all manufacturers, including Mercedes. Which, let's be honest, would never happen. No team willingly votes against its own advantage. Especially not this one. Especially not now. So the real question becomes, how far is the FIA willing to go to protect the integrity of its new era? This isn't just about legality. It's about perception. If Mercedes wins early races by 20 seconds, the narrative shifts. The 2026 regulations, which were designed to create balance, suddenly look like a failure. And once fans believe the sport is rigged, fair or not, trust is hard to win back. And here's where you come in. Do you believe the FIA should act now to preserve parity, or let the best engineering win, no matter how controversial? Your opinion matters because if this loophole defines the early part of the season, the debate won't stop here. It'll define the next generation of Formula One. Let's imagine the FIA stays quiet. No directive. No clarification. Mercedes rolls into Bahrain with their thermally activated power unit fully intact. And in qualifying, George Russell takes pole by 4/10. Kimi Antonelli lines up third, stunning the paddock. Suddenly, the whispers turn into headlines: Mercedes is back. The media calls it a resurgence. But inside the paddock, the other teams know exactly what's happening. And they'll have no time to respond. The power units are homologated. The materials are locked. Ferrari can't rebuild their pistons in 4 weeks. Audi can't reconfigure their cooling system in season. And Red Bull, if they're still battling reliability, might not even finish the first race. In a single Grand Prix, the entire competitive landscape could fracture. That's the real danger. Not just that Mercedes wins, but that everyone else loses before the fight even begins. We've seen this before. In 2014, it was the split turbo. In 2020, it was DAS. And now, in 2026, it could be compression through thermal expansion, a trick so elegant, so invisible, that no one saw it coming until it was too late. But this time, there's no Lewis Hamilton. No proven champion to anchor the headlines. It's George Russell's team now. And a teenage rookie named Kimi Antonelli who's about to be thrown into the most politically charged F1 debut since Jacques Villeneuve. They won't just be racing, they'll be defending a concept, a design, a legacy. And here's the paradox: if Mercedes really has built a legal power unit that outperforms the field, isn't that exactly what Formula One is supposed to reward? Innovation, brilliance, risk. So why does it feel like they're on trial for following the rules too well? Because in this sport, the line between genius and controversy is paper thin. And right now, Mercedes is walking it with surgical precision. So I'll leave you with this: should the FIA step in before the lights go out in Bahrain? Or do they owe it to the sport, to us, to let the cars run, let the designs breathe, and let the truth come out where it always does, on the stopwatch? Let's not forget, this isn't just about Mercedes. If this loophole stands, the entire 2026 development race flips on its head. Teams that bet on compliance and transparency, like Ferrari, like Alpine, like Audi, suddenly find themselves playing catch-up with no legal pathway to recover the gap. That kind of disruption doesn't just cost points. It costs careers, reputations, and entire technical programs. Think about the engineers at Ferrari who were told, "Don't gamble. Build within the intent of the rules." Now they're watching a rival gain tenths per lap through a trick hidden in metallurgy. How do you explain that to your shareholders? To your drivers? Lewis Hamilton didn't leave Mercedes to trail behind a car powered by a legal loophole. He left to win with fairness. And speaking of drivers, what does this do to the psychology of the grid? Imagine Oscar Piastri or Charles Leclerc going into a weekend knowing they're already 3/10 down before FP1. In a sport where margins are razor thin, that breeds frustration. Frustration leads to mistakes. And mistakes spiral into headlines. The pressure builds, and not everyone handles it the same way. We could even see a return of something F1 hasn't experienced in years: formal protests on race weekends. If Mercedes wins convincingly in the opening rounds, don't be surprised if a rival team files an official challenge to the legality of their combustion chamber design. That would drag this out of the shadows and into the public eye, where the damage to credibility would be much harder to contain. And what about the fans? Let's be honest, after the dominance of Red Bull in 2023 and McLaren's comeback in 2024 and 2025, people are hungry for competition, for unpredictability. If Mercedes storms out of the gate with a silent weapon no one can match, the narrative shifts from technical brilliance to regulatory failure. Fair or not, that perception sticks. And Formula One's global momentum depends on the perception of fairness as much as the reality. But this is where F1 is most fascinating. It's never just about who builds the fastest car. It's about timing, interpretation, risk, and political agility. Mercedes may have out-engineered the FIA this time, but now they'll have to outmaneuver the politics too. And that's a battle even Toto Wolff can't control alone. So what happens next? We're days away from winter testing. And somewhere inside the FIA's tech offices, engineers are racing to find answers to questions they never thought they'd have to ask. The sport is at a crossroads, and depending on what's decided behind closed doors, we could be witnessing the opening moves of the most controversial season in modern Formula One history.